Your professors probably told you that elasticity does not equal slope. They're halfway right on that. It does for supply, but not demand. And we're going to use the midpoint method here to visualize and really see for ourselves how this works. Now, before we get started, if you've got a test or quiz coming up and you're absolutely screwed for it, go check out my microeconomics cram kit on my website. I'll walk you through basically the entire class in around 2 hours with my 95 concept breakdowns. Free access available to you, so if you need it, go check it out. All right, we're going to start here with the supply curve and see with the midpoint method how elasticity does equal slope. And then we'll go over to the demand curve and see how it doesn't. So with the supply curve, let's go ahead and just pick 2 points to go between. We'll pick this point right here as P1 with these blue price and quantity values, and this point as P2 with these green quantity and price values. And keep in mind, I'm going to use super simple numbers right here just so we can see what's actually at play. All right, now what I've done here is plugged in P2 and P1 into our essentially midpoint method formula here. I'm just separating out from the numerator and denominator so that we can visualize easier. Because remember, on the top is the percent change in quantity, on the bottom is the percent change in price. When I solve these out and then divide them by one another, we get a price elasticity of supply value of 1.0 when we move from point 1 to point 2. Let's now go ahead and test this again, except move from different points to see if it remains the same. So instead of using this as our P2, we'll use this point right here. So I'll go ahead and update our green values. And I'll go ahead and update our values in the formula. And then now I'm going to go ahead and solve right here. So I'm going to get this value for the numerator, this value for the denominator. I'm going to divide each, resulting in 1.0 again as our price elasticity of supply value. The reason that this is happening, that we're getting the same price elasticity of supply value, is because of the direct or positive relationship of the supply curve. As price increases, quantity also increases with it. So it doesn't really matter what points we're moving between. The slope of the supply curve is what's going to determine our price elasticity of supply. Now this all changes when we're working with the demand curve because of its inverse or negative relationship. As price increases, quantity decreases. And that's going to mess with our midpoint method formula dependent on where our midpoint occurs. Now before we pick these 2 points and solve for the midpoint method, there's elasticity regions that you need to know on the demand curve. If our midpoint falls right in the middle here, it's going to be unit elastic. If our midpoint falls somewhere in this bottom half of the demand curve, it's going to be inelastic. And if our midpoint falls somewhere on this top half of the curve, it'll be elastic. All right, let's go ahead and see this in action and kind of prove it. Let's start with the elastic region. Let's move between this point, which I'll mark in red here, and this point. I'll mark it in green. From here, let's plug in these 2 points into that midpoint method formula. And remember, it doesn't really matter which order you put them in. You're going to get the same value. All right, I've plugged them in. Let's go ahead and solve. All right, I got this value for my numerator, this one for my denominator, so let's go ahead and divide them, resulting in negative 1.7 as my price elasticity of demand value between these 2 points. And